not know that at the time. It's not like we were walking through that time going, ooh, this is the time. We didn't have that perspective. If you can imagine, because I can remember coming home and seeing on the front of the door a notice that basically said that the bank was going to come back and take the property. And walking through that door and seeing my wife on the couch crying. And I remember that. That was February 13th, 2008. That was one of those times that will always be burned in my vision as to, wow, this is something that we now have to deal with. This is getting real. What are we going to do? I have no resources. She was very incapacitated because when she's pregnant, she has a condition known as hyperemesis. It means she can't eat or drink, which is challenging. And I was freaking out because I didn't really know what to do. We were trying to sell our personal possessions on eBay, and that worked for a while. My point is, regardless of where you find yourself at this exact moment or whenever you're watching this later, all of that has led to where we are today. And one of the challenges that I was faced with, and I think we are all being faced with again, is to ask ourselves, okay, so now what? What do I do? What's going to happen to, real estate? How do I make, my business happen? Is my business still viable? Do I still want to do this? Do I even still have a job to make this happen? All of those things are very legitimate questions, and yet at the same time they deserve an answer, and an answer you may not have at the moment, but you know that you need. And every day you're reminded, you wake up, you hope that today has an answer. Can someone please give me something that I can hold on to, something that I could take, quote unquote, to the bank and actually begin to rebuild on or build bigger on? Those types of questions are questions that likely have gone through your mind in some way, shape, or form in the last, 30, 40, 60 days. And if they haven't yet, they probably will here soon. And I get that 100% because I didn't know where the next meal was coming from. I didn't know if my kids were going to eat, let alone what they were going to eat. It wasn't one of those situations in where your kids say, hey, mom, hey, dad, what's for dinner? And you just don't know because there's too many choices. There was no possibility of dinner without, in this case, the in-laws. That was a very challenging way to live for a while. Especially when you make a promise for better or for worse, especially when you are hoping to be able to deliver more, especially when the only thing you have to fall back on is a PhD. That's known as a public high school diploma, by the way. And that's what I had. My wife is unable to work. She's got 2 degrees. Her father and family, they got degrees everywhere. And here I am with a PhD. And that's the entire point is like, wow, what are we going to do? And knowing for the first time, it was all up to me. The guy who never finished Boy Scouts or never could manage to, I like putting together model airplanes. I don't know if any of you ever experienced that, but I only like the part of putting them together. I didn't want to take the time to put the stickers on and paint and do all the rest of the stuff. I just wanted to put them on. That was good enough for me. I didn't need to finish that. All of those things was what was in the front of my mind. And then someone said, hey, you should become a real estate investor. And that didn't make any sense because not to me, not based upon what I knew, not based upon my understanding, not based upon my history or any of the things that I had done prior. There was nothing that said, oh, he's going to do real estate. Don't worry, you're good. And I was not pursuing real estate as I can't wait to go do real estate. That's the thing that I want to go do. That was not it. It was, and still is, a solution. It is a solution to a problem. And it is a problem that many of us are probably getting closer to understanding in a completely new way. And the problem was simply, we needed a source of income. We did not necessarily need a job, but we didn't know or understand how to do that, how to build that. What are the components? What are the ingredients? See, you can go find a recipe for making a pineapple upside down cake. You can go find a recipe for your favorite latte. But what is the recipe? Where is it? Do I need 2 cups of what goes into, building a real estate business? Part of the challenge that we were initially faced with was the fact that, there's way too many ways to skin this cat. And there was a lot of words we didn't understand and a lot of financial models that needed to be understood. There were just so many. The options are overwhelming, to say the least. Learning to navigate that, learning to reduce it down to something that you could then therefore take action upon took a while. A long while, and takes a lot of people a while. So long, in fact, they spend a long time studying without doing, hoping to find the one thing, the one strategy, or the next strategy that's going to deliver them in some way, shape, or form. I've not seen that happen. And one of the interesting things to think about, or at least that I think about, is, right now can feel a lot like, at least to me, back then. And when you think about emergency situations, for example, that it is very, very possible for someone. I mean, we've seen this on the news, whether it be like Katrina or some other natural disaster. Maybe you were physically present, but you've seen this, especially for whatever reason. You've seen emergency responders come to give help. And yet there are still some people who refuse to receive that help. They send a boat by, maybe they send a helicopter, they send dogs and people with suits and swimming and all kinds of things. They send them by. And here's the point. In order for that person, in order for us to be rescued, we have to participate. We have to participate in our own rescue. And sometimes we can get nostalgic or just want to close our eyes and believe that if I just wait, it'll be okay. I won't have to change. I won't have to do something different. It'll just go back to the way things were. I've said all that to say this. If you're looking at, or as you're looking at, putting together, your real estate business, whatever kind, the way things were, that's not coming back. The sooner we get used to that idea, that concept, then we can begin to ask better questions and formulate a strategy that has the potential to begin to fight back. As humans, often when we experience a tragedy, we can go in many different places, but the 3 common are fight, flight, or freeze, right? And the one thing I can tell you, I'm not a psychologist by any means. I can tell you, though, from experience, that freeze doesn't work. Neither does flight, especially in this situation. Where you gonna go? The entire world is affected. And so we're only left with one option, and that's fight. But what does that mean? What does that practically look like? How do you do it? And see, the answer to that is exactly what I want to reveal and go with you through tonight. How we have been guiding individuals through the process of this situation that is all new. It's my first pandemic. How about you? I mean, I don't know, but it's definitely mine. If you've done this before, please, will the real Slim Shady stand up or something? I mean, come on, help us out. But here's my point. Having a systematic way to figure out how to navigate is necessary. It's always been necessary. In fact, it's fundamental. It's just sometimes because it's real estate, we skip it. We go straight to the property and start talking about deals, and we get focused on things that, yes, are important, but don't actually matter. For example, if I was to ask you, I mean, especially for those of you who are currently housing individuals, if I just simply ask you, who do you serve? That probably came out as a foreign question. You're like, what do you mean? I, I serve? I don't understand. If I asked you what type of investing you do, you likely would respond with, I do foreclosures. I do short sales. I do fix and flips. You would likely respond with the strategy. And yet, most of the time, you're telling me how you purchase the property, not what you do with it, not who you serve, not how does that property get used, put into productive capacity into the marketplace so that you can derive value from it. Because see, even as a fix and flipper, even though you're not holding on the property long term, there's a particular type of person you're after. There's a person that you are serving. There's a service that you are providing to the marketplace. But if you fail to break it down into 5 component parts, you may not realize opportunity that's right in front of you or what to do about it. And that's what I hope you will use after today. But as I said, it's imperative that you see, you feel, you understand that right now is a very unique time for each and every person, no matter where you are in this real estate journey. And I'm most excited personally for those of you who have done nothing at this moment, who have no bad habits, who don't even know how good right now is, mostly because you just don't have a frame of reference, right? Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break something down for you, but I want to give you a reference guide so that you can go back and study it some more, as you should. There is a book out there by a gentleman by the name of Thomas Ritter. It was back in 2014 is when it was written. And the book is called Alignment Squared. It's called Alignment Squared. With that, what I want to make sure that you understand is how to see, I'm going to teach you tonight how to see opportunity that you may not naturally see right now. And a lot of my examples, because of what we do, are going to leverage the concept of short-term rentals. It is not limited to short-term rentals, but it is going to leverage the concept of short-term rentals so that you can see opportunity. Because in fact, if I was to ask you right now, hey, how many of you think short-term rentals are dead? There's a percentage of you listening to me right now who that's what you showed up today because you're kind of hoping it's still good, but you weren't sure, and you've sat for the last 60, 90, whatever, how many days without making any forward progress because you were waiting to see. You were effectively frozen. And you're hoping that that's part of what I'll deliver today. Well, I can guarantee you will see an opportunity specifically inside of short-term rentals, but more bigger than that is for you to see that what I'm going to share with you can be applied to any and every business. And the fundamental thing to understand is that real estate is first and foremost a business. just like every other. And a failure to believe and understand that is what is central to why some people will not recognize the opportunity that's in front of them. You just won't see it because it doesn't seem like, how is a real estate business real estate's not like a restaurant. Real estate's not like a hotel or a cruise ship or an accountant practice or something. How is that the same? And you'll see that today as well. All right. So the the whole point here is to give you something you can use right now to likely make some changes, to improve your profitability, and to put yourself in a position in which you may not have thought was possible before. But in order to illustrate that, let me first back up to right around March 12th of this year. As a short-term rental operator, all of our locations are currently in Southern California and various apartment complexes in Los Angeles and Long Beach, Fullerton and Irvine. We've also operated in Dana Point and Costa Mesa and more places than I can remember right now. But at the time, and still to this moment, we have 44 beds in operation. 44 beds in operation. I tend to speak in beds because it is number of beds or bedrooms that ultimately is how you can determine or begin to determine what revenue capabilities are. That's another way of saying a 1-bedroom versus a 3-bedroom. In most circumstances, there are exceptions. That 1-bedroom will typically earn less if assuming you're targeting the same customer. Okay. So with that being said, I give that to you for context. On any given month, we will process somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 150 reservations. Now, that information, those statistics, that is BC. I call that before coronavirus. So that's BC. Between March 12th and March 15th, though, very unique one-off, you could call them black swan events, began to occur in rapid succession. So much so that I just started ignoring my email because it was crazy to believe all the things that were happening. And what it came down to is that more than 117 reservations in a 3-day span disappeared. The average value of those reservations was anywhere between $800 to $1,200. What was shaping up to be a record year was gone in about 72 hours. Wow. A number of short-term rental providers experienced this, and they definitely experienced it from one particular marketplace. In this case, I'm sure you've heard by now, around the marketplace known as Airbnb. Because it wasn't so much what they did that was the problem, as much as the problem is the restrictions on travel. We could have handled the all of the cancellations. We could have handled all of the fact that they unilaterally decided to refund everybody their money, regardless of the cancellation fee. We could have handled those things. What wasn't tenable, what wasn't sustainable, was specifically the customer, the replacement customer could no longer have access, could no longer come to the geographic area. That's when people woke up and began to realize that they do not have, and neither do you do not have an Airbnb business. You provide temporary housing, short-term rentals to people that need it when it matters most. And understanding and being willing to expand your definition makes all the difference. Whether you own the property or lease the property didn't make any difference. Your reservations got canceled just the same. right? We're all in the same bucket. Your debt structure, your capital structure, how you put things together. It didn't matter what TV you had. None of those things were relevant anymore. All of a sudden, the entire marketplace was vacant instantly. And it sent a lot of people into a panic. And it may have sent you into a panic with your respective business. Totally understood and explainable. Makes perfect sense. Any normal person, quote unquote, would have panicked. This is where I want to remind you what happens isn't necessarily the issue. What you do about it, how you respond to it, that's what's going to make the difference. Okay, this pandemic is happening to everyone, and depending on how you, not everyone, not your brother, not your cousin, not your mother, not your best friend, but you, how you choose to respond, that's what's going to determine what results or consequences or your reality, if you will, looks like long term. Okay. So, what I want to say to you is it's an understanding or being willing to undergo a process of increasing your understanding about this will serve you greatly so that you're now made able to serve other people, and through that serving solve your own potential or maybe current or existing financial situation, because that's what that's what we discovered back in '08. That's what we see right now, and that's what business has always done. Is entrepreneurs, you and I, we are the ones that are willing to go organize resources and put them out there into productive capacity so that others may benefit and receive a solution that they themselves don't want to, can't, or don't know how to provide. With that, let's talk about what Thomas Ritter in his book Alignment Squared um, speaks of. There are only five, and let me be clear because there's going to be lots of notes tonight, or some notes, I should say. We aren't going on. All right. So hopefully you should still be able to see my screen, and what you should see my iPad and my and me at the same time. Is that accurate? Just want to make sure someone. Yeah. Okay. Thank you. All right. So there are five. One, two, three, four, five. There are five areas inside of your business that we're going to talk about that you should be paying attention to that will reveal opportunity for you and put you in a situation in which you can turn what feels like something that is out of your control into something that you stabilize, because this is what's absolutely necessary. So let me say that differently. For us, me personally, in the month of March, we woke up and realized in a 3-day span, $80,000 of monthly revenue was gone that we spent and invested 3.5, 4 years to build. And we discovered the tools we used to build that 80,000 were no longer viable. So it was like, how do you replace? Now, I guess the good side is that wasn't all of our revenue, right? Yay. But nonetheless, it was still a very significant portion, right? Very significant portion. And it got our attention and we had to go into action. Flight wasn't an option. Freezing wasn't an option. Fighting is the only option. Because of that, what that meant is like, okay, how do we replace $80,000 a month of recurring revenue right now? That's really what it comes down to. Is like, how do you do that? What is the process? What have we been doing? How do we recoup? How do we keep? We haven't yet had to let go of a person. Yay. We have every property we started with. Yay. All of those things are true, but how? And we're beginning to look at additional opportunities, which is also exciting. It's because we first examine one of the key areas, which is results. When it comes down to looking at results, what we're talking about here, or what I should say, to be more specific, what Thomas is talking about in his book is like, why? Why are you that? Because that's a good question. Why are you running your business? Now, I'm going to run through these 5, and then I'm going to take you through the magic that is the exercise that will help you and elicit and pull out from you your own brain opportunities that you don't even realize are in front of you consciously, but you actually already see them. You just don't know it. Okay. But why are you running your business? That's definitely a great question. The other one, or the next one, is your customer. Who are they? As I said previously, who do you serve? Who are your customers? That's a good question too, right? Because you think, or you may think, you spend way more time thinking about most real estate investors spend way more time thinking about the property, where it's located, what school district it might be in, than they do thinking about how might my tenant use this particular property? What could I do to make their experience at this property be better? Because these are all normal business questions, but I don't hear enough, nowhere near enough conversation around these areas. Then you've got value proposition, which is basically saying, what are you selling? Like, do you even know what you're selling? When it comes to being a landlord, do you know what you're selling? That's a good question, right? What are you selling? Because if you don't know, then there's an issue there, obviously. But when you've heard, because here's the famous word that you've been hearing, you got to pivot. Great. What does that mean? How do I do it? Can you help a brother out? Because I get it that you said it on your Facebook Live or in your YouTube video and you're telling me to pivot. That's wonderful. But what does that mean? You might have, it didn't matter. It's kind of like the first time I closed the real estate transaction, guys, you don't understand. It was crazy because people were telling me, hey, you gotta open escrow. And I'm like, okay, how do I do that? And in my brain, in my mind, I'm thinking of something physical, like a book that I have to go open. And and I'm like, I don't know what that is. No one has told me. And then I still remember very clearly my first 12 transactions. No one told me, so I didn't do it. No one told me I had to go back to escrow to like close it. And they would call me saying, hey, we've had your check here for a while. Are you going to come pick it up? I didn't know how it worked. I just know that I was going. But I understood what the value proposition was. I had no clue on exactly how to do the business or change it or all of those types of things. But I knew what I was selling and to whom it was sold, but I didn't understand the process by which it was sold. And that was something that I just learned over time. But my point is, taking the time to understand this as a real estate investor it makes all the difference, right? Because it's just like every other business. All right, so let's keep looking, because then we have whoops, that's wonderful spelling there, is value, in this case, demonstration. Now, for those of you, in fact, if you are or have a number of short-term rentals, as we've defined them, whether, I don't care if it's a boat, a taxi, treehouse, whatever, if that's you and you're in the comments, I would love to know that. Like, let me know how many bedrooms you have in operation and the geographic location. That would be wonderful. because when we get over to Q&A, that'll be very helpful for me for reference, etc. But now we're talking about value demonstration. Specifically, how do you sell? How do you sell to your customers? Because this is everything. And in fact, if you are a realtor on the phone today, or on the phone, on the web, Zoom, whatever you're calling these, it's like Funly. Suddenly, everybody knows how to use this stuff, but we don't know what to call it yet. Then you're going to benefit from that part as well. And then we have capability, specifically meaning what abilities does your business needs, or I should say which, because that's probably more grammatically correct, right? Which abilities does your business need to run it? Like, which abilities do you need to actually make this work? Do you need to run the business? Now, here's how this works. And it's relatively simple. It's more powerful in a group, and it's something you can do completely by yourself, because and still will put you ahead of nearly every other person in the real estate game right now. Okay. And let's also be clear. This is we're going to go through it. We don't obviously have time to go through all of it, all the pieces. We'll go through as much as we possibly can, enough to get the point across, and then you guys can do with it as you please, because this particular system of evaluation will assist you regardless of the crisis your business experiences. Understand, this is more crisis management than anything. And the challenge is that most small business owners, we don't have a crisis management team who has done this work already and made their recommendations, and they've got a book or a plan where they pop it out. Okay, let's do this. That we didn't have that. So we kind of got to develop it on the fly, and here we go. See, when you're doing this exercise specifically, the first part to realize is, do I know those answers as it stands today, or in this case, as it stands BC, before coronavirus, before crisis, before whatever crisis your company is currently undergoing? Then do I know those answers? If you are just now getting started or considering getting started in real estate, these are basic questions that you should be asking long before you begin to start writing offers. You should know many of these answers. And if you don't, and if you spend more time talking about, the quality or size of a hammer and the nail and which type of glaze and what aisle that's in Home Depot, well, please strongly consider, because understanding the value that your business brings to the marketplace will change how you operate and give you more capacity, more capabilities, and ultimately allow you to deliver more value to the marketplace. And when you are able to deliver more value to the marketplace will therefore reward you with more of whatever it is that you desire. If that's currency, then currency. Great. If you understand my meaning. But here's the very simple exercise, is to go through all 5 of those questions. And that, again, that's not all of the questions, but I'm just trying to give you an idea, is to go through all 5 of those questions in 3 different stages and just write it down and just ask yourself out loud in a group. You want to do a group of friends, or maybe you guys get together at tomorrow on Zoom and all get together and you run through the exercises or what have you. This will assist you in not only pivoting. Okay, so we can call this the first tangible way to pivot that you've been told forever, and it will also flesh additional opportunities out. So here's what I mean. There are 3 particular stages to any crisis, right? If you will, because that we understand what before was, right? But before is gone. We can't act over there. There's nothing you and I can do about before. It's gone. It's too late. That deal, oh, that would have been so great. I should have. Too late. Move on. Right. And if for some of you, if you, especially if you have an existing business, this may be a time of mourning, briefly, but a time of mourning because there was an idea, there was a hope, there was a vision that has effectively died. Okay. Or that version of it has died. And that's okay. Now, what you want to do though, is you want to put yourself in a situation in which you have the capacity to now consider what to do. And the first way to deal with to put yourself there is to get rid of or deal with the past and let it stay there because it's not coming back. Right. I don't know about you guys. I've been having this conversation. I have four children, 23 down to 9. Help me. And I've been talking especially to the younger ones and letting them know, like, look, you may want to go back to school. Like that's some of they like want to, they actually want to go to school, which I'm like, oh, this is amazing. But it's not going to be the same. I don't know what it's going to look like, but it's not going to be the same. But I want it to be the same. Doesn't matter what you want. It's not going to be the same. You may still want to do real estate. You may want to still be a great realtor. You may still want to do all those things. Guess what? You can, and it's not going to be the same. How it's done has is changing and has changed. Hear what I'm saying? The world is changing and has changed. So the three stages are right now, we're going to call this over here is during the crisis. Then smack dab in the middle, what we're talking about now, that is immediately after the crisis. And then what we'll be talking about in the future is the new normal. So there are three different stages. Now, because of the way things are being handled, specifically in the United States, but also across the globe, um, depending on where you live in the county and the state you're working or doing your business in, they could be at various different stages of are they still during the crisis? Like my friends in Australia, their new cases are virtually non existent. That's where they are, right? Whereas in California, different story. New York is also a different story than even California, if you think about it. All right. So, but my point is very simple. During the crisis, immediately after the crisis, and then new normal. So, as a quick way of helping you to understand, I'll use the easiest category to deal with to help you illustrate that there's still tons of opportunity, specifically in the short term rental world. So, what we did is we gathered all of our people and our students together and we started talking to them, saying, hey, here's what we're going to do. We're going to do this exercise and we're going to help you pivot. But we're not just going to say pivot and say be warm and well fed and good luck. We're going to show you exactly how to think your way through this particular problem so that you come out ahead. For example, let's look at customers. The question you begin to ask yourself is who are your customers? Well, I know before BC, before coronavirus, before the crisis, we had identified 45 different use cases for short term rentals. Another reason why I have never been willing to call it an Airbnb business is because it's not. And we had identified, like I said, 45 different use cases. And we teach everybody choose three. Well, my three were a were slash are the traveling business professional, families traveling with small children, and then it then evolved to the third one, which is medical travel. So, if you are following me at all, because we're in California, our proximity to Asia means we get a significant amount of business from Asian countries, which is great. The number one customer we had was the Asian business person. So long before March 12th and all the shutdown stuff was happening, we had signals that something was up because we noticed a sharp decline in reservations, specifically from China, because of everything that they were doing. And we were like, we're going to have to watch this. And then the then the UK was suddenly not allowed. And that's when and then I mean it just unfolded. But when your number one customer is the Asian business traveler, and then suddenly you've got Facebook and Apple and Amazon telling everybody to stay home, and then Disneyland closes, you're like, all right, this is going to be fun. We get to figure this out because the primary business customers or our primary customers were suddenly shut out of the market. But let me ask you this question. If there were 45 use cases, what about the other 42? Right? So who are your customers? It's fundamental to understand that. So once you begin to understand that, then you know everything else you need to do. You know what equipment you need to put in. You know what areas of town you need to be in. You know what you can charge. You know what your cost structure looks like. You know any additional services. So let me explain. Once we identified that that's what was going on, we were like, oh, okay, cool. Who's the customer now? And that's where we began the identification process and the three phases. So during the crisis, the customer could be different than the person immediately after the crisis, which could also still change once we get to new normal. And mm, one of the best sources that we went to help us understand where this information was and would be, believe it or not, is the news. The very same news that's been inundating everyone is also the best lead generation source on the planet. You know why? Because an entrepreneur, you are paid for your ability to organize resources around solving a problem. And guess what they do every day at 6, at 10, at 11, at 3, at 6, in color, in all kinds of HD? They tell you for free what problems there are in great detail. Who's doing it? How did it happen? Everything you need to know. The only thing you have to think about is how can I organize resources to go solve it? So, what does that mean? One of the first stories we started hearing was, oh no, colleges are closing. That means when dorms close, the kids still need a place to stay. Well, what about the kids who can't go home? Where can they stay? So we started contacting local colleges, if you will, your Cal State Fullertons, your UCIs, all of the places we could. Then we started hearing about stories from the police and the fire department. Well, because they would be emergency responders right there on site, but it got to the point to where they didn't feel safe going back home. Oh, got it. Which then opened the door for us to be able to serve organizations that would have never talked to us before, known as the city government. Um, we then began to hear stories from nurses who, in some cases, were literally being shut out because of what they do. They're like, no, we don't want any of that COVID stuff here because that's what you're coming to work, right? Yeah. Well, we don't want that. I'm like, wow, interesting. And yet another opportunity to serve. And for the first time ever, I've received communication from hospitals proactively looking for places for their incoming people, which, mind you, the governor have been on television saying, hey, please come help us. We need you. I'm like, okay, got it. Then hotel chains began to close their doors. Then some apartment communities begin to also do the same, which now means the person who was transferring to the area and specifically transferring to the area with pets had nowhere to go at all. And now When you look at the news, one of the stories that you hear all about how the nursing homes and assisted living facilities are having these outbreaks in various ways, but no one knows what to do with grandma, and grandma stuck in her 10 by 12 room, and we can't go visit her. We can only see her through the window, and we wish we could just get grandma out of there, but we can't bring her home. But you know what you can do? You can take grandma to one of our units and have her caretaker still visit. And now, if there is an outbreak there, grandma's safe. See, it's beginning to understand the problem. Ultimately, what was the beginning of the understanding of how we could provide a solution. See, here's one that's many of you will more relate to, because one of the other things we've identified, especially right now during the crisis, which I think is hilarious, is that most adults, especially those with children, when you chose to live where you live right now, you did not consider, you didn't even think about, oh my gosh, what would happen if I have to work from home for 30, 60, 90 days straight? That wasn't a part of the evaluation process. You just needed a place to stay because you were planning on going to the office anyway. I don't need to worry about that. And if you did consider it, you definitely did not consider it thinking that your children would be home with you 24/7 at the same time. So what that means is you suddenly started fighting over the kitchen table and whose turn it was to use it, so that you could get to do the work and sit on a Zoom call while you're trying to figure it out, which is why you're using that horrible green screen effect in the first place, because it doesn't look good. Please stop. And yet the kids are still screaming in the back, right? That's what's happening. Would you imagine if you happen to have short-term rentals that were already catered to the business traveler, but now you have the capability to say, hey, Mr. Employer, if you have a number of people who are used to working in an office and they still need the fastest internet available, and they would prefer to work in a more quiet environment other than the one where their kids are hanging off of them. If you'd like, you know what, you can send them to our location. Let me tell you why. Is because we've already got it all set up. It's ready to go right now. And they can, quote unquote, drive to work and then go home, just like they're used to. And we'll clean it up after they leave. See, there are many different ways to use a piece of real estate. You've got to begin to understand that real estate's about the experience that the person who is physically present is having, not about the property in and of itself. It's not to say the property isn't important, but it's not everything. In fact, it's never been everything. But if you think of yourself as a real estate person, but not a business person, that's where this change in thought can become a roadblock, can become oh no, Airbnb is dead. Okay, I hear you. But that's my point. No reputable business has a one way to acquire its supply or its customers or anything, which is why you've never had an Airbnb business. But see, we can keep going because that's during the crisis. What about immediately after? What changes then? See, doing some just light research, and for some of you, if you want to, you can go to skift.com, skift.com. What you will see, it's a research firm. They charge a boatload of money. So just do the free stuff. And unless you're like me and you're really going to do this thing, then that's a different story. But my point is, here's what I know based upon research. The first type of travel that always, keywords, always comes back is leisure travel. So immediately after the crisis, what do you think we're expecting? Especially depending on when all of those things happen. and a significant, not a small amount, but a significant compression of the leisure traveler. What does that mean in numerical terms? It means a premium price for limited inventory. Because you know why? A number of operators who had an Airbnb business quit, left, aren't coming back. A number of people who were considering it haven't started, are waiting. And therefore, supply will not equal demand. I don't know how long that'll be. I just know that it will be, right? I just know that it will be. And here's another unique situation. Because of the way things are currently during the crisis, length of stay has increased dramatically. What was normally 5 to 7 days is now more like 30 to 43 days, which is wonderful when you're trying to expand, because it means once you have your units filled, your focus can go straight to expansion because you don't have to worry about replacing that person for what is, for us, such a long time, because the systems you run on are just that efficient. So now you put yourself in a position where you can begin to expand faster, acquire more locations, and solve more problems for more landlords. And then as the transition begins to happen, you're the one with more supply, because it's what has happened every time. Additionally, once you get to the new normal, just ask yourself a very simple question. How long is it going to be? When will humans stop wanting a roof over their head? Somewhere near never is the answer. And then you begin to ask yourself another question, like, has any of consumer behavior been modified, altered, changed, or transformed during any of this time? It's a resounding yes. More of you have ordered from Amazon than you probably have ever. I know my own mom, who refuses to use things like Uber Eats and whatnot, has now finally had her experience. Okay? Because how were you going to do the thing? You still had to do what you needed to do. Understanding and strategically going through each of those 5 and 3 of those stages and asking yourself those questions will elicit a significant amount of ideas that you can begin to implement. You can begin to pivot and change. For example, when I'm talking about nurses, guess what? Right now, in many of our marketing materials, we don't really care about if there's a pool or how close it is to the beach. Those things are irrelevant. How close is it to the hospital? Definitely the grocery store. Can I walk there? These things matter more than the amenities that typically can sway someone's opinion one way or another. How big is the complex? Is there a whole bunch of people there, or is it a smaller one? Because see, one of the other customers that's I haven't shared with you, but I will now, realize that your pipes in your house, they don't care about a virus. If they're going to burst, they're going to burst. And once they burst, you just need a place to stay. Because when it takes time to clean up the flood, now mind you, here's how this works. Because you are now home, your spouse is now home, you're on your Zoom call, he's on his, etc. You're doing your thing, but little Johnny's also home. And he's home all day. And you're both on Zoom. So he sneaks downstairs, stuffs stuff in the toilet, and now your pipes burst. And what ends up happening is you need a place to stay. All of those things combined and come together to say one thing. Short-term rentals are still needed, still necessary. They haven't gone anywhere. We've had to change who we serve. We've definitely had to change our value demonstration. How do we sell to customers? Because the channels with which we used to reach them aren't as efficient as they used to be for the customer types that we are now serving. But it doesn't mean the need went away. It doesn't mean the use case dried up. It's not like the airlines, which are currently down 97% in terms of flights. Yeah, it's harder to find a person, but when you do, they're staying longer. And in some cases, paying more, which is also a great benefit. We've also had to change our cleaning procedures drastically, and that's fine. But these were all things that we were prepared for and were putting into place through the process of this particular evaluation. See, you may be caught unawares often, and that's fine. You because that's really what happened here. See, this isn't new. Change has always been present. This has happened before. It's been more shocking, it's been more sudden, and it's been more inclusive. Because typically, when change like this comes, it tends to come to a pocket of people by nationality, by geographic region, by race, religion, in some way, shape, or form. But this time, it's all of us, which, in and of itself, in my opinion, is its own kind of freedom. Because now you've got a lot of cloud cover for making a mistake. See, as humans, we cannot stand looking stupid. We can't. We have an addiction to looking good, so much so it gets in our way of learning. But right now, because hey, if it doesn't work out, you know what you have? You have a get out of jail free card called COVID-19. Tell a friend, hey, I'm going into business. Great. Next year they ask you, did it work out? You're like, no, why not? COVID-19. They go, oh yeah, got it. You're off the hook. Okay. But many of you'll also interpret what I just said as the very reason why you can't succeed. As I said, that's what was true for me back in 07 and 08. Because see, at the beginning of 08, we started with a situation in which, man, it felt like we were losing everything. By the end of 08, from June 18th through the end, we had closed enough transactions for the first time ever that my entire family tree was forever changed because one person generated a 6-figure income inside of 6 months. And then we just kept going, as Omar said, evolving and getting better and better and better and learning more and just really understanding that if you take the time to know who your customer is, serve them well, this real estate thing is rather fun and can become easy. So, with all that being said, I would love, Omar, your world, however you want to do this. I'm available for questions. I will end when you say we're done. That's how I see it.
Okay, well, that's man, tons of great information there, Jace. Thank you so much for that. Go ahead, if you have any questions, folks, go ahead and post them in. Mercy, thank you for the hand clap there. I did get a nice comment here from Linda Latu. She's saying, excellent talk. I've been circling this, but needed to hear it the way you explain it, Jay. So
awesome. That's good.
You did a great job on that.
Awesome. I appreciate that.
Okay. Let me just ask you, Jay.
Yeah.
You referenced some people were having a tricky time finding the book. I think some people
I can pull it up for you.
Find a link to it.
Yeah. 1 second. I'll pull it up for you, and then you'll see it, and it'll be very clear. And it should then therefore be easy for everyone to go from there.
Jay, can you tell us some, referencing the book, some tidbits that helped you out during this COVID issue and all that you reflected on?
Well, probably the biggest thing is to understand, like the biggest thing for us, specifically as it relates to short-term rentals, is understanding that when we understood, when we got really, really clear that the problem was value demonstration,
Mm,
meaning how we demonstrated the value and reached our customer and made the sale. Once we understood that, everything started falling into place and clicked. Whereas for a different business, it could be a capability situation. For example, if you take a restaurant that was previously dine in only, it was more their issue was more around capabilities, not so much value demonstration, because how they sell to the customer, that part is still possible to a limited degree, but they didn't have a way of getting the food. They didn't have the capability of delivery. And so each business or business type can have a different, of the 5 areas, it can be one of the different areas. And that's what you've got to do, is figure out what area is currently plaguing you. And then once you've got that down, you're good. But you got to get to that point. And if you don't get to that point, that's when you have, that's when you have a problem.
that's very fascinating. When you say the value demonstration,
Mhm.
can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, yeah. So what I mean is this: in BC, before coronavirus, what it comes down to is the actual. Here we go. The actual. So what you see right there is from the Copenhagen Business School. You may even be able to get a free download, but that is the document, the book, etc. It's 146 pages, so yay. But there you go. So the what it comes down to is that once you understand that the business or the sales methodology for a short-term rental business was previously predicated upon another company's or many different marketplaces and who they were marketing to, it became very, very clear. Well, it was always clear to me that we needed to have diversified customer acquisition methods, as any business would be. And once it became clear that the customer acquisition methods that we were using were primarily targeted to the persons or types of customers that were the most affected, it just got really, really clear what we needed to do in terms of how do we find this new person. That's how we got to call the universities, call the city, call national hospital networks, start calling these targeted uh, institutions, because they have a problem, right? And we can help them solve it. And then when all of the governors started going, send your healthcare providers here, it's like, well, that's easy. So all of those things, and when you're starting to receive emails from hospitals saying, hey, does anybody know anyone, it's like, oh my god, all we got to do is get the word out. And it was just understanding that. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's genius, man. Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
Okay, let me hit you with a couple of questions here.
Sure.
Okay, so this is from Michael,
Hmm.
and he's saying, did you use an investment realtor to find your properties? And he
No.
follows up, how did you find your realtor, and would you recommend him or her?
No, no, and no. You realtors are historically not well suited to to exercise your way through the strategy as I tend to teach it, because before you buy the property, I actually want you to lease it so that you can get not only experience but a higher cash on cash return than would otherwise be probable, because again, the amount of money necessary for a down payment can be an underutilization of capital, especially for those of you who are in a pre-retirement stage trying to build your asset base so that you can get to retirement. So it's a three-phase system where you start off leasing, then you learn to scale, and then from this scaled enterprise, what you have is an entity that keeps producing down payment. So, for example, if you had 100 grand, you take that 100 grand or 250 or whatever, you take that 100 grand and you build a number of short-term rentals. What we have documented and proven across 16 different countries now is that within a 10 to 18 month period, you have your original capital in cash back in your hand, which now means you have the engine that you built and your cash if you're willing to delay that gratification of ownership or equity just a little while longer. And now you have a new choice. It's like, hey, cool. I can go buy a property and get more down payment, and I don't have to wonder where it's coming from. It's coming from this thing, right? And I have more experience. I know how to run property better. There's just so many benefits that we have learned. And some people, like myself, instead of going to buy, what we do is well, shoot, I got to, let's double that down and grow the portfolio and do it again. And everybody's got a stop point around how many bedrooms that they're looking to use or have in operation before they switch to buying.
Okay, yeah, that's great. So just to summarize, you're suggesting everybody start off leasing up the property first, get their
Yes.
business going on, start
Yep.
generating revenues, and
Yep.
then they build up those reserves where if they want to buy something, now they have the ability to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's exactly what I'm saying. I'm not saying creative acquisitions and raising capital, all that stuff. I've done it, and this is better.
Okay, fantastic. So on to the next question here. This is from Jimmy,
Hi,
and he's
Jimmy.
saying, based on the stats you have access to, when
Hmm.
are you expecting demand to come back, particularly the traveling population?
Got it. So if if your customer, if you want to serve vacationers, I would say about 4 years before we get anywhere back to the levels that we're used to. We have a number of phases and things to settle first, because understand, just because a governor says everything is open, that doesn't mean everyone feels safe to do the activity that they're like, ooh, it's open. And if you go and do a light study of what happened in 1918 and also what happened with SARS, go look at either one of those, and you will see that in the areas most affected, like for example, if you take SARS, they're still wearing masks related to SARS from then. Okay, it hasn't changed. It changed, marked behavior changed. 1918, it took them about 4 years to get the economy, quote unquote, back to pre, Spanish flu levels. And I don't think it's going to take us that long to do certain things because we're way more connected now than they were then. Yet, if we're specifically talking about travel, um, it's going to be a bit because the airlines are probably in the most trouble. Then we also have an issue with auto manufacturers as well, and I don't know how that's going to go down, but those are two big factors when it comes to travel, right? So in fact, if you were thinking of buying a new car soon, you might want to just wait a minute because it's going to be interesting to see what's happening because of the amount of new cars that are piling up and the lack of financing that's there or the capacity to even buy these things. So, and then the cruise ships, though, they'll modify and they'll be okay. I've already seen some of that already going on. They're going to downsize, if you will. So some of the smaller types of cruise ships will be there. But when it comes, like I said, when it comes to travel specifically, it's going to be a bit because you got to understand. Like if we just take Disneyland, let's just look at Disneyland for a second. They now have a supply chain issue with their food, right? Because of just how many things have shut down. And when they are ready to reopen, so many other things have to be in place, and so many orders for certain things that just take time to grow and make and manufacture have to come together in order for them to open and be ready. And that doesn't even include the amount of re-education that has to happen for all of their staff. And then they hope the airlines are at sufficient capacity to deliver enough people to Southern California in order to make that work. So there are a lot of intertwining dominoes that have to get put back in place in some way, shape, or form. And again, it's very similar to what I was saying. Over a number of years, we had that $80,000 of monthly revenue, right? But it was gone suddenly. And how do you replace it suddenly without using any of the tools that you had before? And that's kind of the situation that we're looking at. It's like that airplane volume was built over time, and you can't just turn it all back on. There's so many things that got to get worked out. And if the job still exists, does the person even still want to go? Ooh, that's a good question. And if they don't, you got to rehire or train somebody new. And that's a process. I mean, there's just so many things. And what's going to be really interesting to me is not only what happens with minimum wage, but what happens with some of the jobs that we previously didn't necessarily pay a whole lot of respect to. Like you think about your janitors, your cleaners, and all of these things. uh, there's probably some sort of thought process going on, like we should get paid a little bit more for what we do, and that's got to get worked out too. There's just so many things that have to get worked out, and then we get to down to public opinion. Probably the most interesting thing is let's see what happens around schools. Let's see what happens around schools, because that'll probably begin to give us an idea of the speed with which things are going to heal. Because when parents are going to feel safe to send their kids there, that's going to begin to give us an understanding of what else might happen in some of those other areas.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I like that you brought up the whole thing about SARS. I have a family out in Japan, so out there wearing the masks, that's normal out there.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
normal. And now it's not weird to do it here. In fact, we're taking it to a whole new fashion level. In fact, Disney, and if you can get one of these, that would be very helpful for me. But Disney has, they just came out like 2 days ago with like a baby Yoda mask. And I'm like, dude, I kind of want that. Because, hey, that's just what it is. So I'm just like, yeah, that would be cool. So
well,
it's a
there you
fashion,
go.
it's becoming a fashion piece at this point because it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So there you go, folks. You can find the Yoda mask there. Send one
Baby
over to
Yoda mask. Yes. Bring it.
I
I'm
just
all for that.
just for me. Out there in Japan, people travel in the trains and they're very close. So,
Right.
masks are kind of, but just folks out there ask when you're in the car and you're
Mhm.
the only person in the car. Okay. That's just a little bit overdoing it.
Yeah, but that's the thing. We're all gonna form an opinion about it. Um and there's going to be an opinion about it. It's going to become another dividing line, because humans are very good at we're very good at segregating ourselves, no matter how much we say we don't want to. We're just very good at that, because we want to be around people that we are most like, that think like us. It's just human nature to classify and categorize things. So, and we're going to have to learn to deal with it because that's just where it is. That's just where it is. So.
Yeah, that's definitely evolving.
Mhm.
Okay, this is an interesting question here.
Go for it.
This is from Andy M.
Hi, Andy.
Go back to the new normal, do you think people will prefer to short term rent a house in place of a hotel with hundreds of other people? We're just talking here about how we want to
Got it.
separate ourselves. What do you think about that?
Um, I think people are going to edge towards short-term rental, not necessarily because of the hotel. The concept is going to necessarily go away. They're very complementary. They serve two completely different purposes. But because consumer behavior has already been markedly changed and has now just been accelerated in certain categories. For example, we were already going down the I don't want to own a car, let me just rent it because I can have my own private driver called Uber or Lyft, right? So we were already headed that direction. We've got sites in the sharing economy for cooking and for utensils and for expensive camera equipment and for all kinds of things. And now we've got experiences as well, right? Where you can hang out with one of the best local artists and who helps you to do the things that you want to do. And now we're learning to translate that and put it online for the exact same reasons with cooking classes, etc. So that's the trend that is going to be that every traditional real estate investor is going to need to learn to deal with. There will be, in my opinion, a portion of nearly everyone's portfolio, and definitely if you're in the apartment space, where you will need to understand how to do a move in and a move out in the same day, clean and turn the unit. Otherwise, you're just going to keep losing money because the marketplace is going to demand more efficiency. Long before this, back in 2016, we were seeing millennials specifically, and definitely those in the entertainment industry who were living full time from short term rental to short term rental intentionally as a choice. That is not going to slow down now. That'll be the reason why you're going to need to deal with it. There are some more reasons, but that'll be like the reason.
That that's great, and that kind of uh, leans on a little bit on that whole the sharing economy they talk about, right? You know, people
Mhm,
don't want to own their cars; they'll use the
mhm,
Uber
mhm.
and that whole idea.
Yeah, about the only I mean, we're at the point where we're not even owning the phone. It's on a monthly plan, isn't it? You don't
Mm,
even own the device. You know, hey, 29.95 a month, 30 months, great. I'll do that, and I get a new one every year? Absolutely. Just keep paying the 20. I mean, just understand consumer behavior is what's going to drive it.
fascinating. Okay, next question here.
Mhm.
Okay, so this kind of has to. You mentioned something about research here. This is from
Okay,
Reynold
okay.
Adolph.
Mhm.
What do you think about vacation rentals in seasonal places like Lake Arrowhead? So he's looking at Lake Arrowhead.
Got
How
it.
do you gather rental histories of comps so you're confident you will rent enough to make a profit?
Got it. Vacation rentals in seasonal areas are, in my opinion, are going to struggle for a while. They are heavily dependent on international travel,
Mm,
which is going to be a long way off. The first type of travel that's coming back is domestic and regional. And yeah, so it's going to be a long way off. Um, but you need international travel for your seasonal short-term rentals. I don't see how you do it. I mean, I don't see how you do it. There's just not. I don't see how you do it. I don't see how you do it.
okay.
So, because they're too out of the way in a lot of cases to have a backup, if you will, a hospital nearby, et cetera, et cetera. Now, there are some that are maybe near a hospital, but typically that type of property is not the same one that a nurse or um, or even a doctor is going to necessarily stay at during their contract at a particular hospital. So there's that's a hard one, um, and not one that I would be pursuing at this particular moment. That is not where the play is for sure.
So it sounds to me like you recommend you say this backup. If you have a
Hmm.
certain customer,
Hmm.
maybe also you want to have that kind of backup customer, that complementary customer.
Absolutely.
Uh,
Yeah, you want complementary customer archetypes that have similar equipment needs or can use the same equipment differently, but they don't need something completely different. For example, to be extreme, if I was serving, say, the entertainment industry or dancers, if you will, I may put in my short-term rental a mirrored room with a ballet bar. Well, the mom traveling with kids has no use for that room at all. Also, if I'm serving families, which we are. However, it is an intentional and conscious decision to never use a twin bed, because the moment I use a twin bed or put two twin beds in a room, that means I cannot put adults there, because most adults don't want that. So we'll use king size beds in all the rooms, and that's more than enough for your kids to have a lot of room, and adults can still do it too. So you've got to choose overlapping customer archetypes that have similar equipment needs.
That's very fascinating. So keeping the king size beds in every room, so you're accommodating the adults and the kids.
Yep.
Okay, wow, that's great. Okay, so the next question here,
Mm-hmm.
Michael Flores here.
Hey,
How do you
Michael.
deal with the volatility of the local government? I live in Yorba Linda, and they just came out of nowhere and banned all short-term rentals within the last year.
Yeah, totally understood. So it falls into the definition of understanding what that locality calls a short-term rental. In most places, it's 30 days or less in terms of the length of stay, because it has to be not only for affordable housing reasons, but because they would be in straight up running up against the NAR at that point, um, because they would have no way of fighting the National Association of Realtors. So it's all around length of stay. There are a number of strategies where you don't have to do less than 30 days. You just don't have to. That's just what is popularly thought of as like, oh, well, if we just get rid of this, then they can't do it here, which it's just short-sighted in a for a lot of reasons. And we have a number of units that are minimum 30-day stays and longer. And my point is, you can totally do it that way. So the number one way to deal with a government of that kind or ordinances of that kind is just change the length of stay, and you're pretty good.
Okay, very good, very good. Michael, I hope that was helpful there.
Hmm.
Next question here is from Jimmy.
Hey, Jimmy.
And Jimmy's asking, what are the top 3 platforms you are receiving most of your bookings from post-COVID?
Well, Airbnb still has the best system, so most of them still can come from there. However, we've had to diversify outside of that. So it's not about the platform. It never was about the platform, but it's really not about the platform anymore. What you've got to do, Jimmy, is develop a real business strategy when it comes to how to attack your marketplace and customers. So, a question like that usually comes to me from someone who has some experience, who has a number of short-term rentals in the marketplace. So here's a very easy and simple idea that you can execute right now. Go email every one of your existing or past guests. Send them all a message for 2 reasons. One, see how they're doing. And two, offer them a 5% off coupon or $15 or a $25 gift card for a referral that results in a reservation to your location. Depending on how many units or how many other individuals you've already served, guess what? You'll get somebody. And if you don't get someone today, that's fine. Do it again. Keep doing it. Develop an email marketing strategy. Let me go one step further. If you have somebody in a location right now, proactively ask them to extend. We've been doing that since this whole thing started, and almost every time the people who are here, in some cases there are people who are here who are legitimately stuck. They just like, where am I going to go? I can't go home because home is international and I'm stuck here. I ain't going nowhere. Well, do you have a friend who might also be stuck here? Like, who are you hanging out with and Skyping with or Zooming with that also needs a place to stay? We can make sure that they have the location right next to you, if that'll help. You know, you've got to employ real marketing now. You've got to employ real business. It's not just about waiting for an electronic platform to deliver you a customer. That's BC. Now you've got to evolve next level, and right now.
That's great. That's great. I love that. The whole emailing your past customers and giving them a discount to come back if they give you a referral. That's
Yeah, just
awesome.
give them a reason to do it, and you'll find that people will do it.
Let me ask you something on
Sure.
that question.
Mhm.
Do you have any idea when you ask somebody to extend, what percentage of those people actually do
Right
extend?
now, almost all of them. Right
Almost
now,
all of them.
almost
Wow.
right now, it's everybody. Are you
Wow.
kidding? They got nowhere to go, and they can't go to a hotel, or they can't afford to go to the two hotels that might be open. And if they can, they really can't live without a kitchen. They
Right.
can't. It's like we have so many advantages right now that it's like, guys, I mean, yeah, they could go to the Motel 6, but now you have also agreed to eat out every day. You There's no need to go to the grocery store because you have no place to prepare that food. And yet with us, you can have a kitchen if you'd like. And that's a big selling point, especially right now. And if you have internal washer and dryer, that's the other one, especially right now. If you have a washer and dryer inside your house or inside your unit, yeah, you will definitely get somebody because they don't even want to go to the common laundry area. Remember, social distancing. I don't want to go there. You think about it.
No, it makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I mean, if you got the laundry machines in there, you got the kitchen, I mean, you got the advantage there.
Correct.
Wow. Okay, that's great.
Hmm.
Okay, I got another question here.
Sure.
This is Andy M. Do you think
Hmm.
eventually the government will dictate or regulate cleaning procedure types for rentals?
Yes.
You think they will? Wow.
I've already seen. We were ahead of what Airbnb themselves had instituted,
Mm.
um, and yes, yes. The long and short of this answer is eventually, not yet, but yes. There's a significant amount of pending legislation in every state. In fact, let me see if I can pull it up. I'll show you guys. But there's a significant amount of pending legislation in nearly every state around various new things that are going to happen or what they want to have happen. Let me see if I can pull this up. It'll be a great resource for you to stay on top of so that you can begin to track some of the new bills that are trying to be passed and whatnot. Give me a second. Yep, there's one. I need the United States one. So you can find, let me see, one, two, three, boom. So what you're looking at here is exactly that. It's on a Tableau. So I will post this in the chat. Where's the chat?
Jay, do me a favor. This is a great shot. I want to put this on our Facebook and social media stuff.
No problem. And so there you go. So that's the link I'm looking at right now. And you can see a what is this? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19,
Whoa, they
20,
never stopped.
21, 22. There's like 22 pieces of legislation that are specifically state or pending state laws or enacted state laws related to COVID-19, all the way from, and some of the most interesting ones are, oh, where to go? One of the most interesting ones that I like was like, what is AB 828? So if you are a traditional landlord, you're going to want to pay attention to AB 828 because basically what it is going to provide a statewide temporary moratorium and on foreclosures and unlawful detainer actions during the entire COVID-19 state of emergency and lasting until 15 days, in this case, calendar days, after the state of emergency has ended.
Wow, that can really hurt a lot of people out there.
And so, and again, that's not on the news, but that's something you probably didn't know and may want to keep paying attention to as you continue to go through this process because things like this are coming. And there's also, I saw there's one for a rental assistance program that was very, very similar. And then for those of you who are commercial landlords, you're going to want to pay attention to SB 939 because it does the same thing, but applies to a commercial tenant. So, so whether it's residential or commercial tenant, as long as the state of emergency is declared still, and 15 days after, no unlawful detainers, no eviction processes. Just
Wow.
sit with
Fascinating.
that one for a while. I
Yeah.
mean,
So everybody, wow, that Jay just posted up that link in the comments there. Make sure you got that in there. That's great information, Jay.
so yeah, that particular resource, you can go state by state and figure out what, see what's going on. So if your properties or locations or whatever are in a different state, that'll probably help.
Okay. We got comments, very nice comments here. This one here from Reynold Adolf. If you were starting over now and wanted to get into short-term rentals, what is it, live in LA, homes are expensive, and just have 20,000 to start with HELOC not an option, what would your strategy be?
Anything that's not inside of the LA City boundary proper. If you're outside of LA City proper, you're going to be great. So that ultimately the first question, the first decision that you have to choose is who do you want to serve? Until you've done that, and that's why we had to develop a 45 questions, six-page questionnaire to help people understand how to flesh that out and to understand, because it's not just, just put it up and slap it on Airbnb and you'll be fine. Because see, what happens is that a lot of individuals, and again, I'm not intentionally trying to offend you, I'm just trying to bring to light what you may have done. But a lot of individuals confused earning money with, I know what I'm doing. And you got to understand, you got in the way of something that was just working, which is fine. That's great. You took action, but you didn't understand why it worked and why it doesn't work, or how you were doing it changed, and you got caught unaware. And oftentimes when we can easily confuse, hey, I'm earning money with, I know what I'm doing. And that's the problem, is that may not always be true. So you want to evaluate, you want to make sure, you want to consider that there's more work that's required when you're trying to build or want to build a multiple 6 or 7 figure business. And make no mince about it, this is a multiple 6 and 7 figure business. For the most enterprising, for those of you who are the gung-ho kind, this is an 8-figure business. That's what it is. But you're not going to approach that casually. You're going to take it seriously, and you're going to make the proper investment, and especially into infrastructure and systems, and then you're going to get there. There's no you're not going to shortcut it. And the only person that ends up getting hurt is you, because you tried to shortcut it. But if I'm starting over in LA, if that's what I'm limited to, LA County, anything that's not in LA City would likely be a place that I would go, especially after I chosen which customer type that I would be serving.
Okay, that's great. That's good. So, Reynold, I hope that was helpful. And Jay, before you, I know Jay is a master at putting systems together, putting business systems together, and helping people become wealthy and build their wealth. Before you share how people can find more about you, a couple of very nice comments. This is from James Hernandez. This man and way of breaking concepts down. Thank you guys for setting this meeting today.
Yeah, thank you.
Like this. Thanks again. There you go. Thank you, James, for that beautiful comment as well.
Yes, I definitely I appreciate the words beautiful mind. They mean more. Those words mean more to me now, since a few years ago I was diagnosed with ADHD and autism, and I didn't know it for a long time. So it all makes a lot more sense now. So I definitely appreciate you, James. Thank you for saying that.
Awesome. And I hope I'm saying this correctly. Leilene Leong, wonderful present organizing. Thank you very much, Leilene, for that nice comment.
You're welcome.
And before we wrap this up, Jay, how do people find out more about you? and how you can assist them if they're interested in getting involved into short-term rentals.
Yep. I mean, I am relatively easy to track down. I am in the process of putting together a live streaming series because so many more people are at home right now. We are going to be serving people in that particular way. That's going to be on our YouTube channel, but obviously, as you can see, we have our Facebook page. We also are available on YouTube. Almost anywhere you type in the word cash flow diary, that's where we're going to be. For those of you who absolutely positively know, like, yo, this is something that I want to keep pursuing and I want to do some more around, we're going to be holding a multiple days starting, was it Monday? Yeah, it's starting on Monday, and it's going to go for 10 days. We're going to get people started because that's what we're literally going to do. We're going to be breaking it down, going step by step by step by step by step. And if you want to register for that, you can go to cashflowdiary.com/learn live, and you'll receive the details and the link of where we're going to be doing the live streams so that you can participate in that if you'd like to as well.
Okay, fantastic. Cashflow Diary, I just typed that into the chat box there, folks. So follow Jay at cashflowdiary.com. Jay also has an awesome podcast too.
Mm-hmm.
So listen to him. He brings great speakers together there.
That's
and
right.
we've been also recording this. So the people that are on here,
Mm-hmm.
make sure you send us an email to our site there over at meetup.com, and we'll make sure that we send you. It's going to be an unlisted link through our YouTube channel. Okay, so it's not something that's going to be accessible to everybody. It's the podcast because you put the time and energy to be here with us, be an audience here for Jay as well, and get this great information. So cashflowdiary.com, make sure you email us to get the link for the recording of this. And with that, we're going to go ahead and end it there. Thank you so much, Jay. Fantastic. You were the perfect guy for our first online meeting here.
There we go.
Nice. He's even got the audience clap.
Awesome. Good. I'm glad that I could help. Thank you for having me. For those of you that have listened, thank you for listening and your time. Please go do something with it. And I look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us.